All right. There it is. We're live.
We're live.
I think so.
Okay. Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of Stream of Truth, and I'm Dr. Tassel.
I'm Sean Kelly.
And as you can see, we're in the same place today. Sean is visiting Nashville, where I live, so we have a special format today.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're doing our first show together, first live stream together in the same place, and yeah, it's a big deal, I think, for us. And we got some new equipment and stuff, and have been having fun sort of setting that up and trying to prepare for the next stage where we're gonna have turning this into like a podcast and that type of thing. So maybe you want to start with the mission statement, that just to kind of remind everyone what we do, why we do it, and then we jump into today's topic.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Okay, so our mission statement is to bring self-healing and expansion through living in our truth, sharing practices, experiences, and teachings in an uncensored, unrestrained way, and always with love, helping others understand and know that they are their own hero.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk about mental health and how I think we can empower ourselves to sort of take the reins, I think, on our own healing. Does that sound right?
Yes. As opposed, I think, to what we probably all have experienced to some degree of feeling that we need to turn to the external for guidance and assistance in almost like curing us of our problems. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think what comes to mind for me is that this like idea of empowering ourselves, and we talk about this a lot, about our sovereignty and our expertise and our own guidance systems and trusting ourselves and stuff. So I think that's like a big part of the goal, I would say, to help empower people to do that for themselves and their own mental health, journey. Because I think everybody has mental health things going on, right? So it's useful in all these different ways. And I think we were talking about how we would both share our experiences with our mental health, or with our experiences with others' mental health, or how we were engaged with based on our perceived instability in different ways, or things like that. At least for me, that's what a lot of it was.
Yeah.
And then sort of framing that around, I guess, what we learned about how to trust our own discernment.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to start with your story?
Sure. So I'll do it fairly quickly. Essentially, I and some of the viewers will be aware of some of these components to it. But for a long time I struggled with depression and sort of suicidal thoughts. Not so much anxiety, but just a sort of feeling like I wasn't doing enough or being enough, or I was somehow broken or wrong, and that it was hopeless. And I also felt like I didn't want to be here, right? That was sort of an undercurrent. And my childhood was very, I was very loved and supported. I wasn't, I want to make that clear that, my parents did an amazing job supporting me and getting activities for me and praising me and doing all the things that parents do. And so it wasn't anything to do with a state of my life. It was just this sort of almost natural disharmony that I felt in myself as I grew up. I just felt like other people, I feel like I was a little different. Mm-hmm. And other people just, I couldn't fully grasp it. I walked around literally my whole life going, why is everyone else so normal?
Yeah.
Why is everyone else is fine?
Yes.
Why can't I be fine, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not fine, so I must be broken. I must be like defective.
Yes.
And so when I'm walking around the world, I'm seeing all these all these people like cutting their lawns, perfectly content to be doing these monotonous things. And like me, I couldn't wrap my head around a lot of the behaviors I was witnessing.
Yeah.
And humans and sort of interactions between people, a lot of like power struggles and peer groups and popularity contests and
Yes.
diplomacy and
Yep.
friends, and then later in work or school, trying to cater to everybody, and totally feeling like I was not honoring myself, but I didn't see a way for me to honor myself, which sort of eventually grew and grew into this idea that, yeah, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not really made for this place.
Yep.
There's no, and after 30 years of that or something,
Yep.
well, I guess it really sort of started around 13 or 14, I would say, where I started to, like, around puberty, where I started to find my independence and pull away from some of the attachment to my parents as being my guiding
Yep.
force. I started to, like, be a bit more independent, but in that independence, I saw sort of how weird I was.
Yeah.
And so 20 years of that, you get to a point where it feels very purposeless. And so I got to that point, and then that's when I had my spiritual awakening. And if anybody's had a spiritual awakening, or had a Kundalini awakening, spontaneous, or they worked for it, stuff starts to get weird. You start to experience aspects of reality that not everybody notices.
Yep.
And things, it's really easy to be like, okay, now not only do I still feel like I don't really belong,
Yep.
but I'm also now like going crazy,
Right.
as when compared to like the societal norms of talking to ghosts or to
Yes.
spirit, or to hearing messaging come through,
Yes.
not understanding what any of this is coming from,
Yep.
starting to have psychic cognitive or precognition, and being like, I just thought that and then it happened, and like things like that. It starts to really mess with your stability.
Yes.
And so now I'm not only depressed. The depression, what I ended up noticing was that there were times I could ignore it, but most of it just sort of permeated throughout my whole life, I would say. And there were various attempts to like ignore it, distract from it. And I did it mostly with work.
Yeah.
I had happiness. Like, I had my children. I loved my children. There was all this different sort of aspects of my life that I did enjoy.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like there was a particular thing.
Yeah.
It was just an undercurrent all the time of I'm not supposed to be here. I don't see a way to change so that I fit better.
Yep.
So it's pointless to do anything or to try.
Yeah.
And for me, a large part of that whole journey was self-acceptance.
Yes.
Was like just like embracing that I'm a bit weird.
Yep.
And then talking about it too was huge. So I sort of started this YouTube channel as almost therapy for myself,
Yeah.
right? Like getting out some of the things I was learning about how to deal with energy and how to protect myself energetically, how to improve upon my state, and really improving. Sounds like I'm trying to change it, but really it was more about accepting the state,
Yeah.
so that the state becomes the norm, but it's accepted, and so there's no more resistance from me. But during that, when it was all at its peak, I was seeing synchronicity in everything. I felt like there were trees talking to me.
Yep.
I could hear voices. I could see. I would sometimes feel that spirit would be talking to me through other people. I would see synchronicities, and because they were all new to me, I would misinterpret what it meant because I was still seeing it through like a lens of a distorted kind of fear.
Yep.
And so I'd see a lot of warnings and stuff like that. And I started to like sort of really detach from reality. And so other people witnessed that within me and got very concerned about my mental health, and everybody constantly projected onto me. They didn't outright say, Sean, you're crazy. Most people, some people did, but most people just projected that sort of energy.
Yeah.
Of like even their concern for my mental health was almost offensive to me, right?
Yeah.
Because I felt like my mental health was getting better, and I'm seeing more truth,
Yes.
and everyone else is like, Sean, you're losing it.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to a mental health facility a few times, mostly at the advice of others, or required, like pulled in. And, there was one time where I was walking down the street singing opera loudly, and then the police pulled me over and took me to the mental health hospital. And basically kept me there for 5 days. Like, the psychiatrist signed what they call a Form 1 in Canada, which is essentially, you're locked in here under the Mental Health Act in Canada.
Yep.
And then they try to put you on meds, and, you have more people, and these are physicians, these are people that have authority, and you sort of have this reverence for their opinion, telling you that what you're experiencing is not real, and these types of things. And so I also should say as well that I worked at a mental health hospital for 5 years. So I also saw a lot of like the benevolent side of that system. A lot of the people that I worked with were very light and bright and oriented towards serving people and helping others. And so I didn't have any notion of like psychiatry or any of the mental health fields being negative in any way, or maybe and then I still had a lot of that trust that the doctor knows. But it was in the mental health system that I'm like, oh, these people, the ones I dealt with, not all people, of course. I'm not trying to ever cast that sort of net and generalize everybody, but the people that I was engaging with in those systems did not seem oriented to my best interest. They seemed oriented to changing me to then fit into the societal norms, almost to regress back to the old Sean, and I would go back to that cut off, depressed state, more or less. I could sort of see that that's where they were trying to get me to go. They're trying to get me to turn off these new experiences and new senses and things like that. So that's sort of like a summary of my experience. A whole bunch of stuff happened, but I think that that's typical of an awakening. Some people have it where they don't realize it's an awakening. They may not be as tapped into different psychic energies. So it can be like a little bit less explosive. It can be more gradual. So there's all these different ways, but almost always mental health starts to be a real thing, because especially if you talk with your family about it, it's almost like you're not the person that you were last week. So who are you? What happened to you? You must have lost your mind. And so I think for me, like, one of my big missions is to help other people that are going through that maintain their own power. While they may feel that they need to seek some type of healing from others, or they may engage in the medical community, and there's nothing wrong with that, but to approach it from a different sort of lens, like a sort of more of an awareness of like, these are sort of like suggestions from the physicians or from the psychiatrists, or these are, and a lot of their suggestions come from some, I would say, outdated understandings of what's actually occurring in people. I think there's a sort of a gross misperception of what's actually happening when people are experiencing depression or schizophrenic type episodes, psychosis, manic, or mania. And those are the big ones, I would say, but and I experienced all of that. And I would say also that I think that part of a sort of side effect of like an ADHD type mindset, which I say as not a disorder, I think it's just a different orientation of the mind. There's a tendency to be like hypomanic, where you get super excited, but then super down as well. You can kind of swing, almost like a bipolar, but you're not as it can happen so quickly, and it happens all day.
Yeah.
Instead of going through cycles like a bipolar personality disorder, you're sort of up and down all day long, moment to moment. And so those are some of the things that I dealt with, some of my experience, and I always was researching mental health. It was always really interesting to me. I was always researching psychology and trying to understand how the mind works, because I always thought that if I could figure that out, I would find some self-healing, basically. So yeah, that's basically my story. And I learned so much from it. Like I know that I had to do all that to see it from all these other sides. I'm just going to restart this because I'm not seeing any chat, just in case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's so interesting. There's so many parallels in my story. I really resonated with you saying how you felt like you didn't fit in throughout your life, and that meant there was something wrong with you. I definitely felt that way too my whole life. And I remember even just trying to be like the other kids. And I remember, I think I told you this story, how I would try to force myself to listen to this certain like heavy metal music that all the like popular kids were listening to. And I didn't really resonate easily with other kids usually. So that created a lot of loneliness and I think depression, and absolutely thinking that there was something like just foundationally wrong with me. Like, why am I so weird and different, and I need to change to be like other people.
Yeah.
And then kind of also similar to what you said, when I went through like a kind of intense spiritual awakening that led into, I would say, like a big period of depression, because I basically think I opened up and I started looking at my life through a different lens and being really like, oh my gosh, this is my life. What am I doing? Just seeing things more in their truth in terms of my marriage and everything else. And I didn't know what to do with it. It was like a blanket had been lifted off of my consciousness, but I was still in my old life. That wasn't really a match for me. And I really just thought I was going crazy. I didn't know what was going on. And I went to different psychiatrists and psychologists, and it felt like it was just reflected back to me. There is something wrong with you, and you need medication. And somehow I knew in my heart that that was not the path. I knew that was not the path. And then, like you said, I really went into my own research and my own searching for answers. And that's why I ended up entering a doctorate program in psychotherapy, just to try to figure out, like, okay, what has happened my entire life? Why have I felt so weird and alone and different? And why am I so depressed now? And just, searching for answers. And a lot of what I did come across in my psychotherapy research has informed me of, well, a lot of what I think we want to talk about today, of this, I would say, socialization programming in our society, that when we do feel different or we do have unusual experiences, or even if we're sad, that the messaging is that, oh, there's something wrong with you. And you need to come back and be normal like everybody else. And maybe that means you need to take medication or do all sorts of other things. So I want to ask you, how did you find, I'll say, your sovereignty in this? How did you eventually realize there isn't anything wrong with me, actually?
So for me, it's kind of weird. It's kind of funny, weird. I kept getting guidance to just ignore the humans. Just almost as if, Sean, you're not really of this place. Ignore the humans. Just ignore them.
Was that like the actual kind of message? Was ignore the humans? Yeah,
it's
that's awesome.
The message was worry not about the play of humans or something like these, and they meant play as like a theater.
Yeah.
Like it's essentially just that kept coming through, and I would constantly question that, like being like, that doesn't seem very smart to just ignore the humans.
How am I going to do that? I'm down here with the humans.
Right. How do I just ignore the humans?
Yeah.
I eventually started to switch it to ignore what doesn't feel good.
Ah, beautiful.
Right. So it started to mold into that. So if it doesn't feel, everyone knows when something doesn't resonate.
Yeah.
They just sort of back out of it, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of what it was. Like if a human starts to try to give me advice, especially unsolicited, like if I want advice, I'll ask for it, right?
Yeah.
So any type of unsolicited advice, or like people when they sort of perceive something about you and then try to go, here's what I think you should do.
Yes.
Without any
context.
Right. And and there was no ask.
Yep.
It's a judgment, right?
Yeah.
They're judging your state.
Yep.
Based on what they've formed.
Yep.
In their societal complex, but then also their perception of you. You have sort of a form in their conscious mind of being this certain way.
Yep.
And so if you're not like adhering to that, they want to get you back to that to normalize it.
Yeah.
Right? They want to get you back to where you were in their mind.
Yep.
And they think they can prescribe a little way, like maybe you should talk to a psychiatrist, or maybe you should stop staying awake as long as you did, or you should change these behaviors. Because some of the days I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
I'd be awake for days and days on end.
Yep.
And so people would, understandably, they'd be a little concerned, right? But my guidance kept coming back, just saying, don't worry about these people. You know, we've got you. You've got you.
Yeah.
Just do as you do.
Yeah.
Be as you be.
Yeah.
And everything will work out. And it was really hard to like believe that.
Yeah.
It was hard to believe that. It was hard to wrap my head around this idea of I've been taught my whole life to listen to other humans.
Yes, to authorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When a doctor, a teacher,
yes,
boss, manager, peers, even.
Yep.
That are in like a leadership role in the peer groups.
Yes.
Like you listen to your humans who tell you what to do.
Yep.
And how to, all the external people have the answer for you.
Yeah. Collective advice.
Right. Yeah.
Rather than internal guidance.
Yeah. And so every time I would follow someone's advice.
Yep.
For lack of a better word, I would get fucked over.
Yeah.
I would end up in a mental hospital.
Yes.
Or I would, be like, one of the times they put me in like a concrete room. It was like a jail cell.
Wow.
Because I was on suicide risk.
Wow.
When I was literally saying, I am not suicidal.
Wow.
And they still put me in there.
Oh, wow.
Things like that.
Yep.
And so every time I would go, okay, I'll try your advice, I would just get screwed.
Yep.
And I'd be like, oh my God, okay, I get it.
That's
like,
the last time.
Stop following these people's advice.
Yeah.
They don't know you.
Yes.
They don't know your heart. They don't know how you feel.
Yep.
They're just trying to fix the problem they see. And there is no problem to fix.
Exactly.
There's just a reorientation, a calibration that's happening in you.
Yes.
And you will get yourself through it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to just emphasize or focus on two things you just shared that really helped you get back to your sovereignty about your mental health. And you said you really listened to your guidance.
Yeah.
And that if it didn't resonate, if it didn't feel good in terms of suggestions, that you didn't follow it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So, whether it was people or the guidance too. Mm-hmm. Because your guidance, you can feel like it's guidance, but it can be the ego.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or it can be guidance that the ego's distorted.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, if it's coming through and it just feels bad.
Yep.
Not if it sounds untrue.
Yeah.
But if it feels bad.
Yep.
Then it's a distortion of the guidance or not guidance at all.
Yeah.
So it was sort of both ways. So like if I'm feeling stuff that's bad and I think it's guidance, that's not correct. And so it became a sort of a bit of a back and forth between the ego and then my capacity to accept the intuitive components in streamings that are coming in as guidance. And I think that for me was the biggest trick, was when it feels bad, there's something
Pay
there.
attention.
There's
Yeah.
something there to pay attention to.
Yep.
Something is not real or true here. But it's also potentially opportunity for like a trigger of some kind, right? It could be an
Yeah.
opportunity to reflect on yourself.
Yep.
So there's that other component to it. Just because someone says something that you don't like doesn't mean that you should ignore them. Mm-hmm. So there's like a balance to it.
Yeah.
That I had to start to find. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'll answer the same question.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Can you repeat the question? So I
It was
remember
how did you actually, what was the question? You said how did you come back to the sovereignty?
How did you come back to your own sovereignty in terms of your mental health and
Yeah.
not like follow what other people were trying to get you to do?
And so how did you do that?
Okay.
On your side.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly why I had this inclination, but I felt I needed to go into my truth. Like after my spiritual awakening, as I just said, I was very depressed, and I felt like I was in a life that was not my own. It felt so non-aligned with what I was really beginning to sense were my values and purposes in this lifetime. And somehow, I don't know how, but I just felt if I keep going into how I feel and the truth of how I feel, that's the pathway through this.
Yeah.
Somehow, I guess it was my guidance that was telling me that. So the way I got into my mental health sovereignty was literally just feeling my feelings and really getting in touch with my inner truth. And somehow knowing enough to not listen to what everyone else was saying about me.
Yeah.
And somehow there was a part of me that knew there was nothing wrong with me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And what I felt I was causing a problem for the people around me.
Right.
And I felt like the, say, doctors I went to, or even family members and friends too, were very uncomfortable with me being very uncomfortable in my life and what was coming up for me.
Yeah.
And it was almost like I felt like they kind of wanted me to be medicated, so I would just stop.
Just so that you could stabilize, and then
then they wouldn't feel triggered or uncomfortable with how I was feeling.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I had been pretty much like a people pleaser, I would say, most of my life. So it was kind of hard for me to live in that energy of knowing they just want me to behave like a good wife, a good daughter, a good girl. Like I played that role my whole life. And now there's another invitation to do that and to shut down the truth that is coming up like a freaking volcano in me. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of invitations to shut that down.
Yeah.
And somehow I just knew I couldn't. I knew in a way I would die if I followed that route.
Yeah, interesting.
Kind of like psychically, or maybe that would, I did have early stage breast cancer as well. And I do think there was some relation to me not living in my truth with that. So, yeah, I got into my sovereignty by just basically, and I think this is one of the main points we try to make in this stream of truth, I basically learned to honor myself.
Right.
To honor what was coming up in me, and I did not pathologize myself. There were many attempts externally to pathologize me, but I refused to apologize myself.
Can you describe what pathologizing means, just in case people aren't
familiar?
That's a doctory type of
To me, pathologize just simply means the idea there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, and where did it come from? How can we fix it?
Yes,
that type of...
it's you have a disorder, something has gone awry, and an external expert is going to to diagnose that and then give you a plan of action, which, often requires medication or therapy, whatever, from an external source.
Yeah.
So I think for both of us, it seems like that was a turning point, that we refused to pathologize ourselves.
Yeah. And I wanted to say that I did try some medications as well. Like, because I was sort of thought, it would be silly of me to not even attempt to look at their suggestions or try their suggestions, right? I would be almost irresponsible to just presume I know. Even my guidance was like, you know what to do, you know what to do, you know what to do.
Yes, exactly.
And I kept, I had to try the medication to realize, shit, I did know what to do.
Yeah.
I didn't want to take these meds.
Yes.
I was aware that the meds were not for me.
Yep.
But I had to take them to sort of notice that.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
And it was, to me, like, kind of helpful, I think, in the way you just said, that I took some antidepressants for a few months, and I could just see, well, this is not the answer. This is not. It did help to stabilize me, and I think medication can be used in that way. But I could just clearly see this is not the path for me.
Yeah, I think I do want to highlight that. It's different for everyone. Some people do benefit from medication. Again, it's the important thing is using your own discernment and heart.
Yes.
And sort of like, does it feel resonant to take the medication?
Yes.
If it really doesn't feel resonant, it's probably not. You can, by all means, go try it, and I think you'll see. You'll see what we saw. Like you'll notice this is not good. Right.
Right.
It's not. It may be better in some ways, but then in other ways it's worse. Right.
It can feel like a Band-Aid.
Yeah, and then you also know exactly that it's a Band-Aid. It's a temporary. It's like putting a Band-Aid over a gushing wound.
Yeah.
You have to keep replacing the band. It's not fixing the.
It's not addressing the underlying issues.
Right.
Of what's going on in your life.
I saw Chad. Chad asked a really good question, and I wanted to get your take on it. He said, "Is your guidance a voice you can actually hear?" Like, how does your guidance come through? Yeah, so it's a really interesting question because it's very important, I think, to say some people hear it, other people don't. Yeah. And so what would you say for your guidance? How do you tap into it, and what is it? How's your experience of it?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and I'm always interested in how other people experience it.
Yeah, it's all different, I would say.
I don't hear it. It's not auditory. I often will see words or sentences kind of like on a screen in my mind, or even much more common is just like a knowingness. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah. It's just like a stream of energy that seems to carry information or something. That runs through. But I do think it's different for everybody.
That's about how mine first started. Like, I would have blips of clairaudient type experiences where I'm hearing things, or I heard sounds or whispers. Sometimes I couldn't really make them out. I think we have sort of different strengths that we sort of program ourselves to in the incarnation.
Different clairs.
Yeah, like we resonate more with like visualization. We'll see imagery, and then the imagery is symbolic to mean something for us, and that could be guidance. So I have a bit of that. Yeah. But most of mine is like you said, an energy. Yeah. And then the more that I applied focus to like understanding what that energy is like telling me, or what I know from the energy, I started to be able to form almost a conversation. And that's where sort of the channeling started to come in. So as I built that knowing, I was like, oh, knowing is the channeling. Yeah. And then I became more able to, just bring it out. Yeah. Because I can feel it coming sort of. Now actually it starts to just come. Yeah. I just go back and forth between like human Sean and then the channel, and it's almost for me sometimes indistinguishable. Yeah. From my advice to my human self trying to hear the advice, it's all starting to coalesce into this. It's all my, my higher guidance channeling through me.
And I wanted to say that sometimes the way I feel I can...
Yes, like a download, Alyssa. Yes. Sorry. Sometimes.
Sometimes the way I feel I can discern if it's my thinking mind or guidance is the guidance just kind of pops in.
Yep.
And I wasn't really thinking of that topic. It just sort
Right.
of like, it's like a visitor at the door. Like, there's just a knock on the door and there's just some...
It's an opportunity to turn towards some aspect of truth that's being offered.
It just kind of comes bubbling up sort of without... I hadn't thought about that in that moment.
And do you notice too that it's like a formed thought almost? Like it's as if you did craft it.
Yes.
Like it's all form.
Yes, and it almost like it unpacks a little bit.
Yeah.
Like
and then
there's layers to it.
Yeah.
It kind of
It's like they've given you this
like
little manuscript.
A download.
Yeah, a download.
Yeah. That you download and it expands in a way.
Yeah, a download, you know, so I think if we get into a little bit more esoteric, I believe we have, you could call them star family or galactic families or soul families. It may not be star anything, but beings that essentially drop in these downloads. And so those, I think, for me, there's a download which comes dropped in, and then I have the opportunity to pick it up and pay attention to it or not. Mm-hmm. And then there's a sort of more channeling the higher guidance for myself that's more like tuning into my inner being, the true being, instead of, and like sort of Sean takes a bit of a back seat in those scenarios. So I see downloads as like packaged bits of thought that are sort of beamed to you from other entities that are trying to help like give you different nuggets of truth to help you, you know, navigate this wacky place. Yeah. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting thing. And I think that's the important thing is like a lot of times when we get our guidance, we question it like that can't be real. Like the guidance is telling me the opposite of what the human believes to be true. Yeah. Right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, like the human can believe that, you know, like just doctors, for example, or like the concept is that I go to the doctor. Yep. They tell me what's wrong with me and give me a prescription, whether medication or not, but a prescribed pathway to then take to my fixing myself. Yes. That's like the framework that I grew up with. Yep. And then the guidance is going, they don't know what they're talking about. Yes. And I'm like, I mean, excuse me, but they've went to medical school. Yes. They obviously are smart people. Yep. They know what they're talking about. And they do know what they're talking about, but what they are talking about is not applicable to your scenario, is the way that sort of my guidance was. Yeah. It's like your scenario is different than what they're trying to fix a thing, but you are meant to be this way. Yes. Yes. Right? Yes. Yeah. So, but everybody gets that differently, and it's totally unique. Nobody's the same. And I personally believe that one of the best things we can do is try to strengthen that, because the more that I've spent time trying to strengthen it and like pay more attention to it, it's almost like it gets stronger. Like the more I believe it, the more I engage with it, just the more natural it becomes. Yeah. And so now it's almost like I have like two personalities in me at all moments, and like there's different perspectives that sort of make sense in all moments. I can either perceive it as Sean or I can perceive it from the higher guidance. And it's very weird. It's a weird state. But I think that's part of like why some of us are here, is to like bring in these different orientations and then just show people that it's fine. Yeah. It's fine. Yeah. It's all gravy, baby.
And I think what we're really talking about is your own sovereignty in all aspects of your life, including your mental health, and again, just not looking externally for the answers. we're so socialized to look up to anyone with a doctor in front of their names, to think that they're an expert, and that they could be an expert in our lives,
Right.
even though they don't even know us.
They're an expert on the material that
Yes,
they've covered.
Yes.
But that material may or may not even be relevant to what's...
May or may not.
Right.
May or may not.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've been in this, astrologically, this Piscean age of hierarchy in relationship. And so this has been just a big aspect of this age of hierarchy of, for instance, a doctor and a patient.
Yeah.
The doctor is seen as the expert in your life.
Right, yeah. And they did not live it.
And they did not live it, and they don't know what your particular life purpose is and your mission here and your values and everything. And, you know, we're moving into the Aquarian age, which is very different, which is
Truth.
Transparency, you know, collaboration, lack of hierarchy.
Yep.
And I think what we're just saying is that at all times, again, for you to always be the leader of yourself in every aspect, including your mental health.
Yep.
And honor what's coming up for you, and also honor your own guidance about where to go with it.
Yeah, totally.
And as you said really beautifully, not to say, well, I'm not going to just, you know, I'm going to block out what everyone else says. It's, you can consult other people, but we always run it through our own guidance, and we just pick and choose what is resonant. Always.
Yeah. You'll, at least for me, you'll feel, most people will feel like when the doctor says, oh, you are this, you'll go, ooh, like that doesn't make sense.
Right. Right.
And then the ego goes, well, it's the doctor and we should listen.
Yes. Yes. You
but
are.
The initial guidance is no.
You are the expert of
Right.
you. You are the only authority in your life.
Yeah.
And everything else is kind of like a reference. It's
right.
I'm just gonna, you know, delve into it. If it's resonant, great. If it's not, it's not. I am the authority.
I sort
in
of
my life.
look at it as like using professionals in any capacity, any type of consulting capacity.
Yes.
Is almost the same to me as like opening a book on the subject.
Yeah.
Like I'm reading a book and I can discard the information.
Yes.
Or what resonates I keep.
Yes.
You know, and sort of eclectically putting together what makes sense. Like an eclectic forming of you know, what feels resonant.
Yes.
So you can consult all these books. You can read all these books.
Yes.
Or you can talk to all these different people.
Yes.
There's no problem with that.
Yes.
As long as you're approaching it from the space of, I'm the one who directs this vessel.
I'm the ultimate authority.
I'm the captain of this ship.
I'm the captain of this ship.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's not resonant with me, then that is not my path.
If you're a captain of a ship and you have a mechanic come on your ship and say some weird shit about your engine, and you're like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You tell him to leave.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, that's how I sort of see it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then just also the experience of different mental health situations that we're in, again, as guidance. So for me and my, what I would call like, I did go through some, you know, intense depression. It was because I was completely out of alignment with what was important to me. Mm-hmm. So rather than masking the depression or suppressing it maybe through antidepressants, the path was over time transforming my life in all those aspects that were not resonant. So the depression was a gift. The mm-hmm. depression was a mirror. The depression was the red flag. The depression was my inner being saying, this is not really working for us, the way you set up your life.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's always, if we weren't in those lower states, we would be content, right, with where we're at, and we wouldn't try to grow more, right?
Yes.
So the depression or dissatisfaction in the reality that you're experiencing is the impetus to grow or to observe what that is and experience it, so that you can understand what the new orientation looks like. And
when we always come from this beautiful orientation of whatever's coming to me or whatever is arising me is always for my highest and best. So these feelings of sadness or dissatisfaction around some aspects of my life, that is for my highest and best. That is, if I listen to it, going to direct me in a path towards what will feel better.
Yeah.
But if I ignore it or distract myself or be like, well, I'm just not going to pay attention to those feelings, or I'm going to like, do a million things we do to distract ourselves from our feelings, whatever it is, then I'm not going to shift. Yeah. But the depression to me was a gift. It was a wake-up call.
It took me a while to get to that perspective, personally.
Yeah.
I had a lot of like anger about being depressed. Like why, and maybe it's a male thing or a stereotypical male thing, to be like, that's weak, right? It's weak for me to feel sad and things like that. And so like I wanted to be strong.
Yes.
And so if I'm depressed, I'm being weak.
Yes.
Right? And so I had a lot of issues around like, why do I feel this way? Why do I have to be such a wimp?
Right.
Right. And then I was like, oh, that's nonsense. Eventually I saw that stuff's just nonsense.
So that's I think that's a great point, that there's such a stigma around sometimes what we feel.
Oh yeah.
Like I can remember a friend of mine saying to me, like, well, you should be grateful. You should be grateful for all that you have, even though I was just feeling really depressed. And I felt almost like ashamed. Like, yes, there was a lot that I could be grateful for, but that was not what was arising in me.
Yeah.
That was not arising in me at all. Sadness and frustration and like feeling so like misaligned, that's what was arising in me. And if I had tried to just force myself, I would call it like it's a bypass, like a spiritual bypass in a way. I think gratitude's amazing, and I always want to practice it. But if I'm ignoring these other emotions that are coming up, then I'm bypassing my truth.
Yeah, I just had this thought, like, I think depression in general stems from us not following our heart.
Absolutely.
Right. So
to me, you could even say it's the death of your dreams.
Right. It's your you may be doing what you think are the right things.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Societal programming
Yes.
and family and all these different ideas have formed this idea that you need to do these certain things in order to be happy. And then those things are not aligned with your heart.
Yes.
So you're not happy.
Exactly.
Right? You're not experiencing the joy that you can experience because you're doing stuff, really you're doing it for other people. You're not really doing anything for yourself.
Yes.
And it's not about like you trying to be selfish, but we're here to follow our hearts.
Yes.
We're not here to follow what Steve down the road says.
Yes.
You know?
I completely agree. I do think that is one way to really think. I think that's what my depression was. I was not in any way following my dreams in any aspect of my life.
I think it's like a heart sadness that you're not doing what you're here to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a like just you're off your path. You're off your path, and you're sad about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say too, objectively speaking, like if somebody looks at my life objectively, I'm in a much worse state, right?
Right. Like materially.
Materially.
Yes.
Like I'm in a much worse state.
Yes.
And I've never been happier.
Yes. Isn't that interesting? But by societal metrics.
Right. Yeah.
You're worse off.
Yeah.
But internally, you feel so differently because you're following your dreams and your heart pulls.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that funny?
It's funny. Yeah. It's like to the point where like I don't even notice the idea that like, oh, I'm lacking in these areas. I feel just abundant.
Yeah.
And really, if we look at my like finances or things, like I'm in the middle of a separation. I've had to move in with my parents in order to be able to afford to pay for the other house that my wife or ex-wife and children live in. Like And so, and then I'm starting this business, but it's not at a point yet where there's a lot of income coming in.
Yes.
And so I'm in this like what would be looked like a rough patch.
Right.
But it's not rough.
Right.
It's great.
Right. But because you're not doing anything that is so against your heart. You're not forcing yourself.
Right.
To remain in certain relationships or certain aspects of your life that you felt maybe like you had to before.
Right.
Like this is what everybody does. Like, I'm in a job that I really don't like, but everyone kind of has that, and I'll just get through it. And maybe this relationship isn't quite right, but I'll just get through it. Like all those concessions, all those concessions we make that add up to just a feeling of despair, really.
Yeah. It starts to feel pointless because
Yes.
whatever you do.
Yes.
To try and be what you believe you're supposed to be.
Yes.
Never gets you to happiness or joy.
Yes.
There are moments of it, of course.
Yes.
But like, but
there's some messaging that, if I just keep doing this, at some point later I'll be happy.
Eventually it's got to kick in.
Right. And
right?
I think what you might be communicating, and I think what I would say is like, now I'm living my life doing what my heart feels very pulled to. So I'm happy now, not waiting for some result on the other end.
Right, yeah. The happiness is there now.
Is in the present.
Yeah, and if you follow the heart,
yes,
then you're not going to be
depressed.
Yeah, basically. And then, the other thing you mentioned was like shame around the depression.
Yes.
Like I had that as well. A lot of like, because on paper, it looked pretty good. I made a good amount of money. I was an IT dude. I had kids and a wife, and everything looked pretty good. I would say on paper.
Yes.
Or like to the observer.
Yeah.
And I love a lot of those things, and I valued those experiences, but I was not being me.
Exactly.
Really,
I just want to share a very similar feeling I had, because I think to maybe people looking in, I looked like I had nailed the American dream. Like I lived in a really big house, and I was married to a surgeon, and there was plenty of money and fancy trips and clothing and parties and all that. And I had a nanny and 3 kids, and it just looked like, by the societal metrics,
she's doing pretty good.
Yeah, like I nailed it. But I wasn't happy, and I wasn't connecting to that life. That life was not fulfilling for me. That wasn't filling my heart.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really just about obviously like living from your heart. And for me, the depression just kind of slowly went away the more I just was in alignment with what was actually important to me.
Yeah, I think that's the cure for depression. It's to sort of stop listening to all the negative nonsense people say, almost, right?
Yeah.
And to try and help reform your story, your narrative, and shift it to a positive thing like self-love. Really, love yourself. Even in the depressed state, I know that can seem almost impossible. It can seem, but we were able to do it. Right.
Yeah, and also like taking some moments to just really tune into like what actually does make me happy.
Yeah,
like
it's a discovery.
Over time, I realized things about myself that I never really knew. Like I just love to take walks. Like to me, that is such a great pleasure. I didn't really know that about myself. Like I don't need anything fancy. I don't need to spend a lot of money on entertainment. I really just like going for a walk.
Yeah.
Or I like fire. I like a fire pit.
Yeah.
That makes me feel really connected and happy, and
we'll have one tonight.
Yeah. Like all these like simple, I think what I'm saying, like for me, I just realized it was not the material world, I mean, at all that gave me pleasure or happiness. It was to me is connection with nature, connection with people, connection with my values. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a question here. Tips on listening to your intuition and how your intuition feels. how to know or distinguish when your intuition is nudging you at you, and how to strengthen it. So I think for me, it was the more that I trusted it.
Yep.
And was also always grateful. That was a big thing for me.
Yes.
The gratitude for it builds an energy of expectation for it to be there. And then the trust also informs that, I think. So trusting and gratitude. And just keep, every time you do get a nudge, notice it's a nudge. Like acknowledge it, say thank you, be grateful, and believe it. Like believe it. And as you do that just over and over, it becomes just more clear when it is happening. There is a sort of a time to it, in my experience.
Yes.
I think it can happen instantly. Like some people have a certain experience that they'll never question again.
Yeah.
Right? And,
yeah.
That kind of happened with me, although I can't remember what that experience was anymore. But I had a certain nudge that literally like predicted almost exactly what was about to occur.
Yeah.
I think it was when I said, I was like having psychic awareness of I'm about to be locked up. Even though there was nothing happening indicating it.
Yeah.
And I was in a psychiatric, I was at the hospital talking to the crisis nurse. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, she's going to try and lock me up. I'm sitting here talking about how fine everything is.
Yeah.
And she's going to try and lock. And anyway, so I had this sort of synchronicity and nudging. And I just predicted exactly what was about to occur. And I left before she could do it.
Ah, yeah.
But then they called the police.
Oh, dear.
So I left.
Yeah.
And then I had to come back and get escorted by security. They throw me in the concrete room.
Wow.
They don't throw you. They put you in there. But,
wow.
But I had premonitioned that.
Wow.
And then left. Thought I avoided it.
Yeah.
But turned out, well, okay, they've got the cops looking for me. I'll just go back because I don't want to turn this into what's that movie? The Fugitive. Like, cause I literally ran away. She left.
Yeah.
She left the room, and I just ran away.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And she didn't say, I'm going to go contact the psychiatrist to put you on a form.
Yeah.
I was like, she's going to keep me here.
Yeah.
And I just ran away.
Yeah.
So you have those experiences where your guidance just becomes obvious. And then a couple of those are like, I guess, just really profound. And then you trust and trust and trust and gratitude and trust. And once you get into that cycle of gratitude and trust and really like believing it, that was for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I've said this before, but I use this little mantra sometimes. I believe, I'm willing to receive.
Yes.
Just like sending out that energy that, okay, yes, I do trust, I do believe. And that seems to open up the valve even a little bit more.
Yeah.
That the faith and the trust.
It's a knowing. You have to know that the guidance is right there.
Yes.
And it's coming in all the time.
Yeah, and what I think I felt, maybe you did too, and maybe other people as well, is that looking back, I now realize, oh my gosh, 10 years ago, I was getting guidance. Like I can even remember what the guidance was, but I didn't really see it as guidance.
Yeah.
But now I do. So I, like you said, it's just like faith and trust and gratitude, like giving thanks, and then it builds. And I wanted to just bring up, I don't know if we've totally touched on it today yet, is I think what we've said is honoring the emotions that are coming up, if they are depression or anxiety or loneliness or anything else. And also honoring these sort of out there spiritual experiences that we have. And it's, again, you touched on it, like it's easy to go to a place of, oh, I'm crazy. Like
it's so easy.
Yeah, like there's some weird things I'm seeing or feeling, and I haven't heard of anyone else exactly having this experience. I must be crazy.
Yeah.
It's really
so
easy to go there.
And that's what everyone reflects to you too, right?
Yes.
Not everyone, but a lot of people sort of reflect that. And I think that part of the reason they're reflecting it is because you're feeling it a little. too.
You're feeling it, and then you're seeing it externally come back to you.
You feel a little crazy.
Yeah.
Someone's going to tell you you're crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And I think probably, especially at this point in time of the Earth's ascension, more and more people are having, the veil is thinner, and more people are having, more connections with the other side. But it's not really talked about in the mainstream, I would say. It's. No. I think there's embarrassment, or like I don't even know how to talk about this. It's weird, or.
Well, I think there's also in media, mainstream media, there's so much agenda.
Yeah.
That it's not in their interest for the humanity to become more conscious, because we're not going to unconsciously drop money into their pockets, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's not all about money, but a lot of it is, you can't control an awakened human.
Right. Yeah. No, it's not.
Right? So they don't really want us.
Yeah.
Waking up in the mainstream yet. I think it's all going to shift.
Yeah. And I would just say, and this is what I suggest to my clients, is whatever is happening for you spiritually, to honor that, and you can trust it.
Yeah.
It's like, I think one of our main messages is just trust thyself.
Mm-hmm.
In whatever emotions are coming up, or whatever metaphysical experiences you might be having, to trust thyself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Above all.
Absolutely.
Above all.
Chad asked another interesting question. He said, have psychedelics given you perspective on mental health? I don't know if you've taken any psychedelics, but I will say that I've taken a bunch.
Yeah.
I don't really take them anymore.
Yeah.
Really. But I would say that what psychedelics showed me is how powerful the mind is. So when the mind gets unlocked from this, I see psychedelics in various ways. I'm talking primarily DMT, psilocybin, ayahuasca, which ayahuasca is metabolized into DMT.
Yeah.
But those psychedelics sort of open up the gateway, and they open up the floodgates for more consciousness to stream in, unopposed by the egoic mind.
Right.
You experience fractions of ego death.
Yep.
And then depending on your dosage and things like that, you can experience full ego death.
Yep.
And so you see the power of the mind, and you get a glimpse into what is around, like unseen stuff.
Yeah.
As far as mental health goes, never helped me. I would say it didn't hinder me, but it never helped me.
Yeah.
In mental health, what it helped me to do was see the illusory nature of reality, that the mind sees it this way.
Yep.
But it's not seeing so much.
Yeah.
Or hearing or feeling or whatever.
Yeah.
Because we shut it off.
Yes.
For various reasons.
Yeah.
So I would also say though that there is a lot of studies going on at like Johns Hopkins around psilocybin and microdosing that to deal with chronic treatment-resistant depression. That there's just a small dosage. You're not stoned.
Yeah.
But it starts to loosen up the mind.
Yes.
To form new pathways.
Loosen up the neural pathways.
Yeah. To essentially establish new narratives.
Yes.
Easier.
Yes.
And so you're not walking around high on mushrooms.
Right.
But, I mean, you are sort of, but you're microdosing them. You're not taking a bunch of mushrooms every day.
Yeah.
And people have reported things like they take the mushrooms for a couple weeks or a couple of times, and then they feel better for like a year or two or three or whatever.
Yeah.
Things like that. So there is that component to it, though I don't have experience in that realm.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that they're doing lots of research. I expect that for therapeutic use at least, they'll legalize that substance any time now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know if you know of anything about any of that, or if they taught anything about that in school.
Oh, golly, no. That just is probably like very, super progressive for the mainstream clinical training that
I would think so, yeah.
I had. I would love to learn more about it. But yeah, I did not study anything on that topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't either, really. But I'm just familiar with some of the research that they're doing, which looks really promising.
Yeah.
Very, very
exciting.
Like high percentage uptick in overall peace or contentedness
Yep.
with the reality.
Yeah.
I think it was upwards of like 90% of participants felt that. And if you
Wow.
compare that to like an SSRI,
Yes.
it's around 50% is as effective as placebo. So
Yeah.
it's like 50-50.
Yep. This is a much.
And that doesn't count the people that are resistant to it. It does.
Yes.
It doesn't do anything for those people.
Yeah.
And so it looks like a very solid,
Promising
as far as
modality.
medication goes, and it's natural.
Yes. Right.
It's not
compared to
a
the
chemically created synthetic thing.
Yes.
It's literally a mushroom.
Almost seems like it's
It's almost like
here
God
for a
gave it to
purpose.
us.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's here for us for our medicine.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's why some people call it plant medicine.
There you go.
There's something there. And I'm not suggesting people should just go dose up on mushrooms.
Right.
Like, be responsible.
Yeah. Just check it out.
Yeah, perhaps, if you are experiencing treatment-resistant depression and you talk to your doctor, they may be able to get you in on the study, or maybe they're not aware of it, and even if they can't get you on the study, you're sort of expanding their mind. They're like, oh, I didn't know about this, and the more people that are aware of it, the more pressure gets put on the government to deschedule them. I think it's called.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting question, Chad. Thank you. I don't have experience with it improving or reducing my, I think, state of mental health, but it was expanding. I would say
your consciousness.
Yeah, it helped me to see what could be.
Yeah.
And helped me to see that our minds are sort of the creators of what we perceive in our senses. Yeah. And then when they get unlocked, a whole bunch of stuff comes through. But they also showed me that you don't need them to do that. Like that the capacity exists within you already. It's just that the drug just opens it up.
Unlocks the door. Yeah.
It unlocks the door for those who don't know how to unlock it themselves in their subconscious mind.
Right. One pathway to do so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Was there any other topics that we wanted to talk about? Is there anything else?
I think we've probably hit.
Let me just check for questions here too. When I first started my spiritual journey, I was seeing people's auras. I thought I was losing my vision, but doctors never found any diagnosis for it. Yeah, your vision's improving.
Right.
I would say.
Yeah.
I would say you're seeing what is.
Right.
More.
Yeah.
So I see auras on a lot of stuff, like little, especially wood, trees, people. But for me, I don't see like the colors really. I just see like a fuzzy aura sort of floating around things. And I thought too that I was seeing stuff. I also see these little, and I don't know what they are, but I only noticed them after my awakening. There's these little swirly lights that I see.
Oh, cool.
I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
I had heard somebody say that they were me seeing the blood cells in the eye.
Okay.
Like seeing the cells moving. Mm-hmm. It sounds a bit weird to me. So I don't know if it's like me seeing more energy, but I think that the doctors aren't going to find a diagnosis because there's no problem, right? Like they may find a diagnosis. If we look hard enough, we'll be able to find a problem in anything.
Yeah.
And no, I think that in those cases, like you're literally just seeing more. Do you see anything like that, or have you had any experiences of it, or?
I don't necessarily see a lot, but I'll have experiences where I'll feel that the trees, say, are talking to me, or flowers, things
I get that
like
a lot.
that.
Yeah, I get a lot
and
of that.
it can easily go to, I'm crazy. Like, what? Trees are talking to me? But yeah, just things like that.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll be bit by a mosquito, and I'll go, oh, and I'll out of just sort of a reaction, and I'll kill it, and I'll feel like a cringe, like a...
Yeah.
And you've seen me do it, I'll apologize to the mosquito, and sort of bless them on their journey to the afterlife. And, these weird sort of things, I think we start to feel more, we start to see more.
Yes, we're more connected to everything.
More present.
Yeah.
And when we're more present and connected, we see and get more stuff to deal with our consciousness.
Yes.
Whether it's seeing a bit of aura or hearing things or
Yeah.
whatever it is. So,
And I think you probably have had this too, but I had experiences of say Mary Magdalene or Mother Mary coming in and sort of seeing her like in a hologram with me and things like that, and definitely questioning it, like did that really happen? And
yeah.
but just landing on that is what I experienced.
Yeah. And one time I looked down at my feet. I was walking without shoes. I looked down at my feet and I was like, those are Jesus's feet. And I was like, what was that? Like, I sort of saw Jesus's feet on my feet. And I just knew they were Jesus's feet, but they're my feet. And it was very weird.
Yeah.
But it was that type of thing.
Yes.
Where, like, you know, and so these things just start happening more.
Yes.
And
yes.
they're pretty wacky. And,
yeah.
And so they can be, you know, they can make you question your sanity.
Yes.
And so I and especially like that example from, I think it was from Ruby, where she's starting to see more.
Yes.
And questions her vision.
Yes.
Right? Because we're like, oh, something's wrong.
Something must be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And as you're saying, it seems like as we spiritually awaken more and more, the gifts are opening up more and more. And there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with us.
And these little seeings or insights or whatever they are little gifts for us.
Yes.
They're private for us. They mean something to us. If we explain them to someone else, they're gonna, you know, unless they're vibing where we're at, they're gonna think we're nuts, right? Most likely. So, you know, a lot of my guidance is don't tell people about it. You know, like I do the YouTube stuff to talk about it because the people that are ready to hear about it or see it or whatever are gonna tune in.
Yes.
Others aren't. It's not really a platform for me to be criticized or whatever. It's I'm just putting my stuff out, our stuff out.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's a way for me to express some of these experiences.
Yes.
Because I can't go to my mom and say, I saw Jesus' feet on my feet, Mom. And then she'll go, what? Right? Like.
And I think you're bringing up a point that maybe a lot of us might feel that, so me as a doctor of psychotherapy, like talking about, oh yeah, I sometimes see Mother Mary or some other unusual things. You know, maybe it doesn't correlate with what we think of as professional or something.
Yeah.
So it's almost a little bit feeling like we're coming out of the closet and being like, yeah, I am experiencing these things. And like that, just for all of us to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But there is definitely, I know I can feel some hesitancy, like, oh, well, people take me seriously in my profession if I start talking about these unusual things as well.
Yeah.
Well, they think I'm crazy.
Yeah. I think for me, I've been doing it for a little while now. And so I've learned to not care at all.
Yeah.
But also I don't have a designation and license and a peer group that
may have judgment about it.
Yeah, I think doctors, you know, they're learned in an area, and these things are not things that they understand generally.
Yeah.
Right? And they're not, that's the thing too, is they're not understandable.
Yeah, by the thinking mind.
And even by the other person. Like, if I share an experience of seeing Jesus' feet, and I can't properly describe what that meant for me.
Yep. And you don't have like proof of it.
Right, I
like,
can't prove to you.
Didn't take a picture. It's not. I
couldn't take a picture.
Right.
Because I looked down and then I like looked back and I looked down and it was different. And there's.
And I feel like I'm landing on no matter what, I'm just going to be myself. And if someone does think I'm crazy, then they do. But I'm not like, if I'm not going to be myself, then I'm going to actually kind of feel crazy inside.
Right. That's great. It starts to feel insane to not
be real and honest with what I actually am experiencing and living.
It becomes less and I think that's why the depression gets heightened.
Yes.
It's because it gets less and less easy
to contain all this stuff that you're not kind of being transparent about. And
then the energy as well of the earth in the moving into in the Aquarius age, facilitates truth.
Yes.
And when you're not living in alignment with your heart, you're living lies.
Yes.
So that's going to get more and more
difficult to contain.
It's going to get more and more challenging.
An inner war.
And that's why
inside.
it's such a gift.
Yeah.
Because it's through that challenge.
Yeah.
That we grow.
Yeah.
Right? And if we didn't experience that disharmony, then we wouldn't go, I need to find harmony.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes. That peace within is everything.
Yeah.
And peace within is living truth within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that's a great place to end it.
Yeah.
Peace is living truth within. Is that what you said?
Peace within is living your truth within. Like the way to peace is living in your truth.
Yeah. As much as possible. It's not always. I don't want to come across like where we do it constantly all the time. Like we all have a whole bunch of moments.
Challenge.
Yeah, exactly. It's like an expanding thing that you get better and better and better.
Yeah, and not to say you
stumble.
Always have to like speak your every bit of your truth to everybody. It's not necessarily saying that. It's just like, but no matter what, like living within your own truth and not pretending within yourself. Yeah,
and instead of, in my case, like instead of feeling the need to convince the other to
Yes.
get on board with my truth,
Let it go.
They say some stuff, and I'm like, they say I'm crazy. I'm like, you're the crazy one.
Or you didn't need to say anything at all.
No, but I don't say it. It's just in my head. I'm like, actually, I think you might be
right.
Right, and I'm like, but that is perfect for you for where you're at, and there's not judgment, but I find it funny to reflect it that way internally.
Yeah.
Not that that's. I don't want to say that I think other people are crazy.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe that crazy is a real thing.
Right.
But it helps me to just sort of giggle about it.
Yeah.
And just let it go as like a funny little thing because I'm aware that I'm not.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And I'll just say one last thing. Like sometimes you'll share a lot with me of just really amazing spiritual experiences and you might joke a little bit like, yeah, I know I'm really out there. And then I think I've said sometimes like, you are the most sane person I know.
Yeah.
Like, because you're really honest about and grounded about it. Like, yeah, this is what I'm experiencing. And to me, I just find a lot of sanity in that, in the truthfulness of it and not pretending it's not happening. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Ruby. She said you two are awesome.
Oh, thank you so much, Ruby.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you everyone for watching. So we'll be going live again on Friday. I'll be in Nashville still.
Yeah.
I'll be going to the airport that day, so we're going to try and do it earlier. We are going to try and start to do a noon Eastern thing. We were going to do it today, but we had all the new equipment, and I slept in again.
That's the truth.
I was tired, and so we're going to start to try to get it at like every Friday, noon Eastern. So that'd be 9 Pacific.
Noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, 10 Mountain, 11 Central. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We look forward to more and more, and we're gonna release all of these as podcast episodes as well. Once we figure out how to do that, I would say.
Right.
Which
right.
I think I know how, but there are probably aspects I need to learn. So
yeah,
we're gonna do all that. So we're excited.
Totally.
I would say.
And I just want to close with the emphasizing of just honor whatever is coming up in yourself. Just honor and love it.
Self-love too.
Self-love, self-honoring, just whatever is arising is to be honored.
And the more you love yourself, the more other people will love you too.
Yeah, you'll see it in the
You'll just see it. They'll just come up to you and be like, I love your blah, blah, blah. Like everything, I see that with you all day long. And strangers in the street stop you to tell you something. And yeah, so it starts to get reflected more and more.
Yeah.
So it gets easier and easier the more you turn back to self-love and accepting your own truth.
Yeah, honor yourself always.
All right, thank you everyone. So we'll end the stream now. Appreciate it. If you have any questions about anything that we've talked about, if you're watching the recording of this, just leave them in the comments. We get all the comments. We share them with each other and answer and stuff like that. So
yeah, and any topics that might be of interest to you, we'd love to hear
topic ideas. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Always interesting, or questions. And even if it doesn't end up on the stream, there may be video opportunities to make little videos about things. So, thank you everyone.
Awesome.
Love your faces.